Hey, welcome to Foreigner in the Philippines. Good evening. Well, we got so much going on right now at the moment, haven't we? And it gets so specific about the coronavirus, right? And so it's usually specific, whether it goes in up your nose or in your mouth or in your eyes or your ears or well, there's only one thing left, isn't there? And we're usually scratching that at the moment because we don't know what to do. So many different stories. But what I've been looking at, let's face it, one of the things that we should be very thankful for at the moment is the internet. And right now, even though it is not without its what can we say, petty foibles, YouTube is one enormous, incredible source of information. Now, the thing about starting off as everybody who's looking at this channel here you may be here because you've seen what we do before, that you've seen our videos and you like what we do and you've come back for more, and you may look forward to that as even as a cheer up thing, because you'll be able to laugh at what we do, whether it be me refusing to eat something because it looks like it came out of somebody's nose, or something else. But you are here because of some either deliberate or accidental thing that happened. And usually when it's an accidental thing that happens, you started off looking possibly for something, maybe holidays. Maybe you started off by looking at holidays in the Philippines, and then you found a couple of expat sites, and you went to one of those where the guy is well, tripping around the Philippines, staying at 5-star resorts with a beautiful girl in a bikini, and he has a $10,000 drone, and really does the whole thing so well. Or you'll be down to what I call the bread and butter stuff, which is Beth and I doing ordinary things, and then trying to help out. So, but you'll be here because of a chain of events. Now, my own chain of events over the last few weeks, I would like to share with you. I don't make these. I'm going to recommend some of the things that I looked at, which have led me to look quite differently at the world. And all I'm going to do is to tell you some of the things that led me somewhere else, those accidental things. And if you're one of those guys who has written to me and said, I stumbled on your channel when I was looking at something else, and I stumbled on it. It was an accident. You didn't know my name or Beth's name and type it in there and end up on our channel. It was an accident. Well, I've been having a few accidents myself lately, and they've led me to possibly to some quite unpopular opinions, but it's possible by retracing steps, if you can, because that's one of the other things about YouTube, is sometimes you end up somewhere, and I've seen people comment. I saw one person comment, and he said, oh dear, I've ended up in that part of YouTube again. And it was strange, and how to get out, and you'll never find your way back. Well, a few of the things I could find my way back, and what is evident is that we are never going to go back to the world that we used to live in. It's never coming back. The entire globe at the moment is at a standstill, pretty well, and some of those things that we are standing still on may not be the right thing. For instance, right now we are not allowed to have church services. Let's try to look at that as a Christian or a believer in any religion, no matter what religion, no matter what section, denomination, out of some over 30,000 different religions, different sects, different churches that call themselves Christian. 30 something, I think it's 33,000 different churches who all call themselves Christian. Now, what I see now is that in one state in America, they have moved to stopping a drive-in service. People were going there and they were driving in to have a service, to join with their Creator. So, one of the things that you might want to look at is, here we are, and we're going to put our faith, and think about this, we are being forced to put our faith in man. Oh boy, was there ever a riskier prospect than that? Instead of putting our faith, as most of us do, in Jesus Christ. So what we're saying is that in this particular case, sorry Jesus, but you can't help us in this. We're going to have to listen to the politicians. We're going to have to listen to people who are wealthy beyond anybody's dreams, and people like Mr. Gates, who has now elected himself to start making some recommendations for mandatory things that we are going to have to do if we want to survive in the world that's going to be left out of all of this pandemic. I saw somebody misspell it deliberately as a panicdemic, and that's pretty good as well. So here's what I'm going to suggest to you, and because it's on video you won't have to take any notes, you'll be able to do that afterwards, okay, if you so choose. But if you really want to scare yourself out of your wits, go and have a look at, type in on YouTube, Agenda 21. The United Nations Agenda 21. Now there's a lady called Rosa, I think it's Qua. If I was in England, O-I, it would be Qua, O-I-R. I'd be saying it was Qua, but it probably is Koire, K-O-I-R-E. And she talks about the UN agenda. Go and have a listen to her. She explains it very, very well. There's another lady, let me see, Shoshana Zuboff, and she talks about surveillance capitalism. Now, these are all very big words and everything, but what it means is Big Brother. Everybody knows, everybody's familiar with that phrase, Big Brother. It means that no matter where you are, somebody is watching you, and that ain't good. What else? Now the main cause of concern, I thought, was the UN 2030 agenda, and it is all about self-sustainability. And here's what they have in mind for us, for you and me who perhaps are living quite happily in what someone once said about us, a painfully simple way of life. Well, let me just tell you something that happened in Manchester. When I was growing up in Manchester, I lived in the slums, They were not grand. It wasn't a grand place. They were kind of tidy, terraced streets. I lived at number 32 Cowsby Street in Hume, Hulme, or as we called it, Oom. Right? I lived in 32 Cowsby Street, Oom, Manchester. It was cobblestone streets and terraced houses, all crammed in next to each other, and they were tiny, and they were a bit crabby, a bit grotty actually. But we had a sense of community, and I lived in Tamworth Street, was also in Oom, and that had a sense of community. If I was hungry when I was a kid, when I was 6 or 7, my parents hadn't come back from work, I could go to Mrs. Hall down the street and I could say, "Mrs. Hall, I'm hungry," and she would say, "Just 1 minute." She would disappear into the darkness of her hallway, and she would come back later, and she would make it so that I wasn't begging, because she would put a towel over her arm in the way that those grand waiters and waitresses do, and she would say, "1 jam butty coming up," and she would serve it to me as if I were a king, and I would walk away feeling pretty good with a jam butty in my hand. Now, the architects said, we can do this better. We don't need to have slums. And what they did, I didn't know this until many years later, they brought in the bulldozers and they raised, as in flattened, entire areas. The streets were not there. I went back and I tried to find St Wilfrid's School, which is where I grew up, St Wilfrid's Secondary Modern Catholic School. And not only is the school not there, but the streets that led from Tamworth Street, which is also not there anymore, and I couldn't find my way. I rode around on my bike, which I brought up on the train from London, and I searched and searched for St Wilfrid's, and not only could I not find it, but nobody could tell me where it was. And then, just by pure chance, I came across a tiny little church, not much more than a chapel, and I recognized that it was the chapel of St Wilfrid's. And I went into the little tiny courtyard, and I rang the bell of the rectory, which was still there, where the priests live, and a novice came to the door, and I explained that I used to go to St Wilfrid's School 30 years ago. Do you think I could just take a look inside the church? Now, these were modern times, so the church was not open because people would come in and do stupid things in there instead of communing with God. And she said, "Yeah, I'll unlock it for you." And she did, and she stood quietly in the background while I went in and went back to being a 10 and, I don't know, between 10 and 14, 15-year-old boy again, sitting in the back row, talking and giggling when I should have been listening to the church service. And then I left. Now, in their wisdom, all of the architects raised all of this sense of community, and they built grand areas of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 story apartment blocks, where instead of being stretched out in these little orderly streets of terraced houses on cobblestone roads, everybody was crammed in. But of course they had an elevator to get to their apartment. Yes, it was apartment. They'd already stopped calling it a flat, and they called it an apartment. And here's the funny thing. They cleared the slums and they made in no time at all, they made new slums, which were not nearly as cute. Had they gone back and just refurbished those little terraced houses on those cobblestone streets, they would have had something that was still a beautiful community. But they didn't do that. And now, 2030, the UN has in mind to move areas of the population. And what they're going to do is they're going to move all of us lucky people who are out in isolation, living such unhappy lives, and they're going to build mega cities for us. Some of them are called global cities, but one of the videos that I listened to, let me see, what was it? Trying to find, well, the UN 2030 Agenda of Self-Sustainability, something like that. And you can find that, and you can listen to one lady who has studied this quite a lot, and she's talking about the mega cities. Now, the mega cities will be self-sustainable because all of the rainwater will be caught specially. People will be stacked on. They won't just be like apartment blocks. These apartments will be like mega cities, and let's face it, it's already been done and is being done. Guess where? Well, the lady that was giving the talk that I listened to had escaped from communist Russia, and she talked about these mega cities. And China has mega cities that have never been moved into. And here is the UN, all for our benefit, are talking about mega cities. Now, if you look at that, you start to get some idea of what maybe is the future that they would like to build for us. So I wouldn't have to put up with the terrible, terrible drive down to the main road. I wouldn't have to do that. I wouldn't need a car. Now, they've done this already. They pack everybody in. They make small apartments with a little balcony that you can go and have potted plants on. Isn't that exciting? And you can all of it is so perfectly planned. And the elevator, of course, it's all there. Now, there will be solar panels, and they're going to make it, everything is just so work. Now, here's the thing, you won't have to have a car. Well, actually, you won't be able to have a car because there's nowhere to park it. And you won't be able, because you haven't got anywhere to go. And this is exactly the plan that they had in Manchester, where they could make it so that you had perfect public transport. And maybe you could have it like it is in Japan, where there's so many people to take that public transport. They have a man who is stationed at every door of the train, and he pushes everybody in there so that you're all like this, but everybody gets in, and they just ram everybody in there. Aren't we lucky to be looking forward to this, isn't it? Well, yes, indeed. Listen to some of the other things, and you can go back, and if you want to look at these things and see if I'm just spinning a load of BS. Global cities, mega cities, redistribution of population. This is the UN 2030. Gosh, I can't wait, could you? Self-sustainability, United Nations, Rosa Koya and the UN agenda. Now, there's a special agenda that they have going, which they've been touting, and they're touting it openly now, called Agenda 21. Go and have a look. Now, Robert Kiyosaki, 2019. There's one that you can go and have a look at. He's talking about the school. He's talking about the school agenda. Now, a long time ago when I was a single parent, seems like 100 years ago, it's not quite that far, my son was talking about getting an education, and I was talking, what do you think is the agenda for your education? What's the goal, do you think, of the school for you? What's the goal? Well, the teacher, he says, always talks about we need to get a job. Absolutely, I said. You need to get a job. You're cannon fodder. That's what you are. They're not teaching you about money. If you go back and look at Robert Kiyosaki, he is making the point of, if you go to school and learn not about money, but about how to get a job, you'll never find out about money. And how does he suggest that he does it? He recounts his own childhood where he went to a man who knew a lot about money and was actually pretty rich. And the man recommended to him that he play Monopoly. Because Monopoly is a game, well, it's one of those clunky games that you kids will not know anything about because it doesn't involve your two thumbs. But if you go back and look at that, and you move around little houses and hotels, and you go to jail, and it's a fun game, but you lay it out on the floor and you move things. Well, the little houses are not as big as this, but it teaches you about assets, about growing, about money. And there's Kiyosaki, who's obviously pretty rich, and he's recommending that that's the way that you could learn about money. Can you learn at school? I very much doubt it. Even now, I very much doubt it. Now, what are some of the things that I learned? I found something that said it was entitled microchip implants. So, microchip implants. I found something about Mr. Gates, who has been putting in massive amounts of money into India so that he can have a clear way to taking in his vaccines. Whether you think about vaccines as being the way overall, well, that's another thing, and it's another argument. Whether you think that, well, vaccines, one vaccine in particular got rid of mumps, and another vaccine got rid of polio, and we're not going to argue about that. But right now, Mr. Gates is promoting his vaccines, and apparently what I read is that one of the vaccines that he's promoting now has not been tested on animals. It's gone straight to being tested on humans, and there are some very sad stories for what's happening in India, but don't take my word for it. You can do your own research. You can go and you can find out. Now here's what I suggest that you do. When I look at videos now, I go also to the comments. Now have a look at the comments and see what people who are looking at what is happening there and have their own mind. Right, good, bad or ugly, the comments will tell you a different story to what is actually being said there. Now, if the media think that someone is a great hero, then that's what you will learn about him or her from the media. So have a look at what other people are saying who don't think he's a hero and try to get a balance. Make up your own mind based on some of the information that comes about. Now, how do you trace it? Well, as soon as you go to one thing, just like the guy who said, oh no, I've arrived in that place, that other place in YouTube. How did I get here? And I'll never find it again. That's what happens. If you go, you'll see something there that says, this was very good, and then there'll be another video next to it that is a similar one, and then one that's, I don't know, just by the fingertips is touching on the same subject, and you will go from one to another. If you went and you looked at a whole series of videos on being bankrupt, you would also probably find Mr. Buffett, who is telling you how to avoid going bankrupt. So you can see one thing will lead to another. I looked at these here. There's another one, a book called The Naked Communist, and that was touched on by someone that I read. I saw a very good video about a lady who is a housewife, a very savvy lady, and she talked about this book and how there were, I don't know, 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 of the Marxist agenda for America, which was written, The Naked Communist, by someone called Clausen. I think it was Krausen, I'm not sure. You'll find it. That's the correct title, The Naked Communist, and it was written in 1963. And he warned then about Khrushchev saying that we don't have to fight you. In America, Americans, we don't have to fight you because we'll sneak in the back door and we'll wreck your churches, we'll get your churches, we'll go in and we'll infiltrate your schools, we'll stop prayer in the church, and it's all there. They said it up front. It wasn't like they came in and did it secretly and then went, oh no, it wasn't us. No, they said, we're going to do it, in much the same way as other religions are now going into America and into the UK and into other France, Germany, and are bringing their own form of religion, which is so different to the actual natural culture of those various countries, be it America, be it Australia, UK, Germany, France. All of those different places are all being infiltrated now, and they're changing, and that's going to give us a different world. But right now, to end off, because I've already gone on too long and my wife is at the back tutting, saying that's going to take me ages to edit and upload, it's important to know that life is never going to go back the same again, and we're going to have to start opposing some of the things that are being put out there for us. No mandatory chipping. That seems to me, I'm not going to have a microchip put into my hand. I'm not going to be stopped forever for worshipping the Creator in the way that I see fit. I'm not going to have vaccines put into my body which I don't agree to. And yet here we're approaching mandatory, that's the word, mandatory. And all of the politicians right now are all saying one world order. So start listening for that. Don't take my word for it. Start listening to it. It's out there and they're all saying it. It requires one world order, global unity. Yeah, right. This is a foreigner in the Philippines.
Please like, comment, and subscribe. It's a long video. Stay tuned.
Did you hear that voice in the back there? She says, please like, comment, subscribe, because it's a long video and it'll take me ages to edit it. Bye for now.